Welcome back to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. The skies over southeast Michigan have been thick with smoke. The source? Over 200 wildfires burning in Canada. Fire officials have classified roughly half of those as out of control. Now, these fires come with many consequences. They've led to thousands of evacuations, with people leaving their homes under duress. The fires have also released vast plumes of smoke that are degrading air quality across the American Midwest. Health experts warn that wildfire smoke poses risks not just to vulnerable groups, but really to everyone. Fine particulate matter in the smoke can enter our lungs and bloodstream and lead to serious health issues. So, how should we prepare and respond, especially as wildfires become more frequent and intense due to the climate crisis? Joining us now to discuss the health impacts of wildfire smoke and the broader implications for public health is Dr. Omar Awan. He's a professor and vice chair of education at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and a senior public health contributor for Forbes. Dr. Awan, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Robin.
So, Dr. Awan, when we see dramatic images of wildfires, the dangers to homes and wildlife are pretty clear, but could you help us understand exactly what wildfire smoke does to our bodies internally, especially our lungs and heart?
Yeah, it can have really profound effects on health, both in the short term and the long term. And I think that's really important to understand. If you take a look just at the most obvious effect, which would be the smoke, right? And the carbon monoxide that's emitted from the smoke. Carbon monoxide is an odorless, colorless gas that when we inhale it, it decreases the amount of oxygen that's in our blood. And when that happens, that means that less oxygen is getting to critical organs like the heart or the kidney, and that results in potentially kidney failure and even heart failure. Now, in the short term, as you said, there are also small particles that get emitted from wildfires, particularly when things like cars or trees or houses are burnt. And they emit really small particles that are smaller than the size of even a hair follicle. We call those particulate matter, as you had stated, Robin. And those can act as irritants to the body, so that when they get deposited in, for example, the eyes or the nose or the mouth, they can result in watery eyes, red eyes, even coughing. And when they get deposited into the lungs, they can be an irritant there as well. And that can result in things like wheezing, coughing, and even in the long term, things like obstructive lung disease like bronchitis or even asthma. And as you pointed out, Robin, it can affect other parts of the body, not just the lungs, but even the heart. So what happens when these small particulate matters enter the blood? They damage the blood. They result in stress to the blood. They result in inflammation in the blood. They can destabilize plaques, and that can cause your arteries to become more narrow, more stiff. That can result in higher blood pressure and ultimately increase your risk for heart attack, which is obviously a really serious thing and a leading cause of death in America. So, definitely, very widespread and diverse effects on health that we're seeing.
In other words, this really is a conversation that is applicable for everyone. And Dr. Awan, we're going to talk about in a minute how folks can protect themselves. But before we do, I want to look at some of the unequal impacts of wildfire smoke, because studies show that communities of color and low-income neighborhoods experience far worse health outcomes. Could you talk to us about how things like redlining and environmental racism contribute to these disparities today?
Well, it's a great question, Robin. And I think that, wildfires disproportionately affect people of color and especially low-income communities. Now, we know that, first of all, people of color disproportionately live in low-income areas and low-income neighborhoods. And those areas typically have higher rates of air pollution. Some people have, molding in their homes that make, the air quality already poor at baseline. We're not even talking about, wildfires. We're talking about at baseline. So when you have the effects of wildfires that contribute to even poorer air quality, that just amplifies the effects of the deleterious and the negative effects of wildfires for these individuals' health. And then we also consider other, socioeconomic issues as well. If you think about people that are low income and live in these areas, they're also more likely to have outdoor jobs, like, for example, construction workers, or even in rural areas working in farms. So they're exposed to this air pollution. And when there are wildfires, they're exposed to these areas for longer periods of time, which then also amplifies the very harmful effects of health from these wildfires. And another thing that we always talk about with, low income individuals, people of color, the Latino patients, Black Americans, they have less access to healthcare, right? I mean, many of these are already have less insurance. They live far away from hospitals. They don't have transportation to get to a hospital or to get to a health clinic where they could get care if they did have coughing or wheezing from wildfire. So, it's sort of a perfect storm for badness for these people, unfortunately, and it can really have devastating effects, and they are disproportionately involved. I don't know how else to say it, but they are really disproportionately involved and affected by these wildfires.
So less access to comprehensive health care is a reason. And then, as you noted as well, it could be folks who don't have the luxury of going inside, let's say, because they work outside. That's where their job is focused. I'm also thinking about folks who have pre-existing conditions, such as asthma and heart disease. And those conditions are notably more prevalent in disadvantaged communities. Can you talk about that, or any examples that illustrate how these chronic illnesses are exacerbated by wildfire smoke?
Absolutely. So I think not only we typically talk about, these vulnerable populations as older people with chronic conditions, and that's absolutely true, Robin, but even children. So people that are 5 years of age and younger are disproportionately affected by these wildfires. And the reason is because these children's lungs have not matured properly, or they don't have a robust immune system. So when they inhale those small particles that we talked about, their bodies and their lungs are not able to clear it as effectively as, for example, someone that's healthy, a 30 or 40-year-old healthy male or female. So they're going to disproportionately experience these bad consequences from wildfires. And the same is true for older individuals who have chronic conditions like asthma or bronchitis, or they have heart disease, diabetes, for example. They have weakened immune systems. They have conditions that already makes it difficult for them to breathe. They may have some wheezing at baseline. And then when you have all this poor air quality, all these fine particulate matters that are in the air that are being emitted, and then they're inhaling it, that overwhelms the lung, and that they're not able to clear these particles in time. And then it results in, very serious health conditions, obstructive lung disease for many of them, or triggering or worsening of asthma, increased risk of heart failure, heart attack. The list goes on and on. So you can see how, because of these conditions, all of these health effects become amplified significantly.
So older folks or young children, even if they don't have asthma, at what point should these groups be staying inside? On Friday, by one metric, Detroit had the worst air quality in the world.
At every point, Robin, honestly, that's what it comes down to. Like, people should be staying inside when there are wildfires present. It's not safe for anyone, even for someone, if you take a look at myself, I'm 43 years old. I don't, luckily I don't have any chronic medical conditions. I would be staying at home if there was a wildfire. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and we did have some effects of this during the Canadian wildfires in 2023 when it spread to the Northeast. But certainly, in Detroit and in Michigan right now, where it's active and it's ongoing, I would highly encourage people to limit their time outside, and that means staying inside, making sure your doors are shut, making sure your windows are shut, making sure you have good air quality, maybe a air humidifier, air purifiers that are in your house. All these things really make a huge difference with respect to, the quality of the air you breathe and your underlying health.
And we should note the air is getting marginally better here in Metro Detroit today. But I think that what you're bringing up, even keeping windows open right now, should give folks pause. And, I was over the weekend trying to stay inside, and then I realized I have a couple windows open. I'm probably not doing myself the greatest benefits here by even having these windows open. This is the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. We're talking about the health hazards rising from the smoke and flames of the Canadian wildfires. Our guest is Dr. Omer Awan. He's a professor and vice chair of education at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and a senior public health contributor for Forbes. So the respiratory impacts, Dr. Awan, of wildfire smoke are widely known, but are there lesser known health effects that you think people should be aware of? We did talk a little bit about them. I'm thinking, though, about the immune system, for example. We spoke a little bit about the cardiovascular system as being one.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we often don't talk about. One is, as you said, the immune system, right? I mean, it's priming our immune system, and sometimes wildfires can overwhelm our immune system to be able to fight, especially when the body starts to inhale too many small particles. The immune system is active and it's trying to fight and trying to get rid of these particles, but oftentimes it can be overwhelmed and it can result in weakened immune system over time, and that makes us more susceptible to getting other infections like COVID, for example, or, the flu or any other, diseases that are there. But one thing I really want to touch on, Robin, is mental health. And we often don't talk about mental health with respect to wildfires. But, if you take a look at even, for example, in LA, just recently, 6 months ago when there were wildfires, people lost their homes. I mean, people lost their businesses. People lost everything. And imagine the stress, the anxiety, and even the depression of seeing your home go up in flames. I mean, these are serious issues, and that can trigger something called post-traumatic stress disorder, which can last a lifetime, and the mental health consequences of those are devastating. So, we often focus on the physical aspects like respiratory diseases, cardiovascular health, the immune system, as you pointed out, Robin, but really, mental health is equally, if not more important when we consider, these health effects of wildfires, and it can have devastating effects, and people end up having depression for the rest of their lives. People have stress and anxiety that they're facing even just in normal situations when they're interacting with their friends. So I think we should never overlook that aspect of this as well.
Dr. Awan, we are running out of time, so I've got two rapid fire questions for you. One is, while I was preparing this segment, I couldn't help but notice that a lot of the research on wildfire and the impacts was conducted or funded by the National Institutes of Health. Given the Trump administration's cuts, are you concerned that additional research on this topic could be on pause?
Absolutely concerned. I mean, it's devastating what's happening with the Trump administration. I mean, this has been a full-blown attack on science. You were talking just recently about the attack on free speech. Well, it's equally an attack on science and our ability to carry out high-level research. It undermines our ability to find cures, to have better understanding of wildfires and all aspects of health. So, the science and the public health community are deeply concerned about what's happening right now in the political atmosphere.
Dr. Awan, thank you. Before I let you go, staying inside, you said, is one way to protect yourself. Now, I realize cloth masks don't protect against the kind of fine particulate matter in wildfire smoke, but N95 masks do. Is that right?
That's correct. So you want to wear an N95 or a KN95 mask. Surgical masks aren't going to do the job because, those small particles can seep through the side. So you want to protect yourself as much as possible.
Dr. Omer Awan, he's a professor and vice chair of education at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and a senior public health contributor for Forbes. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Coming up on the Metro, wildfires are compounding a chronic problem, and that's severe air pollution, which has long been affecting people in Metro Detroit. We'll hear from one activist about how she's fighting for a cleaner future. Stay with us. This is the Metro.